Hi, I'm Monty McKinnon. Thanks for joining me. Today what we're going to do is take this East Indian rosewood that we've got here, which was actually, I believe, a door frame if you look at the pattern that's on this side. And we're going to square it off and we're going to turn this into a fingerboard. We'll get to that right after the intro. Okay, we are back. I brought out the jointer here and I found that this was out by about a 64th of an inch. So I've taken this all apart. I've adjusted the table. I've adjusted this. I've set the screws in here. I took it all apart, put it back together. I've marked it. I've lined it up with the squares and everything seems to be good. So what we're going to do now is get onto this. And I will do one pass and then I will do the rest and get back to you once we're done. So what do you say we start with this? Are you ready? I really like it when I hear the full board being cut because I know it's cutting it square from one end to the other. Now we've got the other side to do and we'll get onto that right now. So I have squared this up. That will work for us on the saw, on either the bandsaw or the table saw. I'm going to check that, but I think it's going to be the bandsaw. And as you can see here, I sure took off a whole bunch of shavings. Get rid of that because we don't want the camera near that. So there we go. That's looking pretty good. Okay, just to let you know what I've got here is I've set this up, which is a guide. It's got a ball bearing here on the end, and I take the wood and I've got this set up so that it will fit just nicely and leave me just a small piece. Now I hope it doesn't run off. I've tightened the blade even more. It should be okay. And we'll see if we can get through one cut here. Okay, I do see a problem here in that it seems to be running off a bit. So I cut a piece off the East Indian rosewood that started off fine on the bandsaw, but the blade started to run in, and it turned out that I had to take this and run it through the table saw. And that's a big bite on the depth of the table saw, but I did get this piece off. Now I have to run it through the thickness sander in order to take it down on both sides and get it nice and even, because when we finally taper this, we're going to put this back on here like this, glued to the side so that the frets come right over it, and it will look like one solid piece of wood. It's just the way we do it, that's all. Now, I want to finish and show you this template, and this is a Stumac template on a Martin guitar. This side is set up for a scale length of 24.9, and of course this side is 25.34. So what I have to do is I have to put some double-sided tape along here, and then I'm going to take a sample fingerboard because I want to make sure I do this right. And then what I'm going to do is set it like this, put it up here against here, make sure it's down tight to the bench, and then press it. Now over here is part 2 of this jig, and in here is a little pin. It's just like a little nail, and it will go on the fence so that when I'm ready to cut this thing on the table saw, it will just so nicely fit in there and it won't move. And then once I've cut it, I bring this out again and I move it down to the second one, and then I cut the slot. And before we do any of that, we need to take the square, the engineer's square, and make sure that the blade is perfectly square. Otherwise, you're going to get your frets, instead of being straight, kind of cockeyed like this, that would not be good. I wonder what that would sound like. I don't know, but it wouldn't be in tune anyway. That I know. So what do you say we put the double-sided tape on here, get our sample made up. I'll go over to the table saw and I'll square off the fence, and I will make sure that everything is ready to go, and then we'll come back and I'll show you a couple of slots and how we do this, because once we've done that, what we're going to do, this is going to be our East Indian rosewood fingerboard. It's nice and flat. It's all been planed. It's a little thicker than what I need, because once I've cut the slots and everything is good, then I will run that through the sander in order to get it down to the proper size. Now, speaking of the sander, what happened the other day is I'm working away in the sander, and then all of a sudden it's just not working very well. And this is the reason why it wasn't working very well. This is almost as smooth as a baby's bottom here, because there's just no grit left on here. Well, there is up in here, but you weren't getting that. You can see that. This is how the sandpaper wraps around and goes around like this on the sanding drum. You know, it's like so. Well, I'm not doing that too well, but well, there it is. So that's how it goes around. So it was too smooth and it would take forever. So it was time to change the paper, and that's not an easy task. So I got it done, and we can throw that out because I did use that as a template for the new sandpaper that's in there. All right, what do you say we get started? And I'm going to do this, and then join me over at the table saw. Sounds good. Now, in order to prepare for cutting the slots on the fretboard, I have to use a special saw blade. This is like 0.024 inches thick. It's very thin, which is what the slots are, because the frets are going to fit down into that. And I wanted you to see this. This is a forest, it's a stabilizer. So when I put this on the saw blade, what will happen is when this is in the saw and spinning, it can wobble, but this going up against here like that stops that from happening. So you needed to see that. Okay, what I've got going, I've got the dust extractor going here, so to pick up the sawdust. I have cut a sample of this at the nut end. You can see where that's going to be right in here. This is all square here to the template. This is square to the blade. And so now it's just go ahead and cut. And I've got my safety glasses on, and I'm very careful of my hands. So here we go. Right now it's fret number 1. Okay, there it is. We have finished the actual fretboard. There's the nut up there. This is the 20th fret down here. And I think it's hard to know if you can see that. It's all square to the edge. And we should be able to drop the frets in there. We may need to hit it with the fret saw just to tighten it up a little bit, but we'll see. That's it. That's the way that jig works. Well, we have 2 fingerboards slotted, and they worked extremely well. I've cut the end piece off and then just bumped it on the sander just to make sure this is perfectly square, and it is. And very soon we got to think about whether we're going to do some inlay work on this and on this. Now, this was our sample piece, but I didn't tell you this. The sample piece is really going to be a fingerboard, but I just wanted to make sure that it was going to work, because it is going to be used on this guitar right here, because I'm making this for somebody to give it to them. So That's good. This is our fingerboard for our build, which is going up here. So it's all good. Now, we got a lot done today, and I hope you enjoyed seeing this video. If you did, please subscribe, hit the like button and the bell, and you'll be notified when we have another episode, and we will carry on. Now, there are links down below. Please check them out. There's a link for the Starbond glue that if you decide to get some of this great super glue here, then you get a 10% discount if you use my name. Now, for those of you that haven't checked out some of the videos that I've done most recently, that is probably a mistake. You want to see a couple of the shops. I've got one from Michael Builds, and he's got an amazing standalone outside dedicated building for his workshop. Like, who has that? Anyway, Michael Builds does. So go to YouTube and check out Michael Builds, and also go to Facebook and look up Jim Miller, and he's out in Utah, and Jim just has a phenomenal luthier's workshop. So if you haven't seen those videos, in fact, what I'll do is I'll link them at the end of this video so you can check them both out. They're really excellent, so go look at those. We'll see you in the next video. Stay out of trouble and stay away from people. Oh, it's interesting times. See you in the next. Bye.